Good afternoon and welcome to today's edition of Meet the Microbiologist. And today our guest is Dr. Lori Burrows. Dr. Burrows is a world-renowned scientist, actually, studying structure, function, and regulation of type 4 pili in bacteria. Pseudomonas aeruginosa being one of her favorite organisms. Dr. Burrows is a fellow of the American Academy of Microbiology, has published more than 100 papers, reviews, book chapters, and is also currently the interim director of McMaster University's Michael G. DeGroote Institute for Infectious Diseases Research. So welcome, Dr. Burrows, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for talking to me today, Dr. Kumar.
So to start with, I was hoping that you could share a bit of your academic journey with us.
Sure. So I actually grew up in Toronto, and I went to the University of Guelph to do my undergraduate degree. I originally enrolled in wildlife biology because I wanted to be a veterinarian. I was one of those horse crazy teenage girls, and so I decided to go to vet school. But as one of my mandatory first year courses in my wildlife biology degree, I had to take microbiology. And I absolutely loved microbiology. I thought it was fantastic. It was so diverse and so interesting. So I immediately switched my major to microbiology and completed my undergraduate degree in microbiology, and then went on to do a PhD in microbiology as well, focusing on bacterial genetics of veterinary pathogens. So I sort of ended up marrying my two loves, veterinary work and microbiology. After that, I went into industry for a couple of years, working for a veterinary vaccine manufacturer, but the company was sold to their competitors in the US. So rather than move to the US, I went back to the University of Guelph to do a postdoc with Joe Lamb, who many people will know. And that his lab focuses on Pseudomonas and CF. And so that's where I fell in love with Pseudomonas. I then started my own lab at the University of Toronto in 1999. And in 2006, I moved to McMaster when they started the Infectious Disease Institute. And I've been there ever since.
Wow. So this is, so it's actually interesting because, a lot of us, we have aspirations to be something, and then we're lucky enough that we find our passion, and now we can merge our aspirations with our newfound passion. So this is really nice to hear. So Dr. Burrows, you are also the winner of Canadian Society of Microbiologists Murray Award 2020. This is CSM's flagship award for established researchers. And after winning that award, you actually did something remarkable. You set up an award for young scientists in CSM. So tell us a little bit about your motivation for establishing such an award.
Sure. So I think I am only the third woman to win the Murray Award in its 37 year history. And, that I found that very striking, and especially since, in science, there is a disproportionate balance between men and women in some fields. So microbiology is actually not one of those fields, right? It tends to be more equal, men and women in that field. But at the higher levels of science, it's still disproportionately male, right? And the fact that I was only the third woman to win this award in 3 decades was kind of striking to me. So when I thought about why that might be, I realized that even though things are becoming more balanced now, they have historically not been that way, right? And I know from my own career that the more success and accolades, I guess, that you get early on, they build on themselves, and the more successful you will be in the long term, right? So that was one of my goals, was to, take the award money that I received for getting the Murray Award and to basically pay it forward to create a new award for female microbiologists, right? So people just starting out, to recognize people who are doing excellent science in microbiology, but also to recognize people who are working behind the scenes to try to improve equity, diversity, and inclusion in science, right? So the other thing that happens when you're a woman, and that when there are few women at the higher ranks of academia, right? So I'm only one of 2 full female professors in my department of 30 faculty. You end up representing your gender, right, on committees, and that kind of work doesn't always get the recognition that it should, right? You also spend a lot of time advising people on, how do I make a career in science and still have a family? How do I have children? When do I have children? What's the best route for me? And so I also wanted this award to recognize people who are doing that work behind the scenes, right? So there's a lot of young female scientists who are pushing hard to make sure that EDI is recognized in science.
That is, yeah, and I actually I remember seeing somewhere that you cannot be what you cannot see, and that's so true.
Absolutely.
And things are changing. When it comes to equity, diversity, and inclusion principles, including those principles in science and academia. When I was a grad student about 25 years ago, I never heard of these terms. So it is, it's good to see that we are making some progress, slow progress. And you mentioned that maybe not so much in microbiology, but in science, in other disciplines in science, equity, diversity, and inclusion is an issue. So, what are your thoughts on the state of EDI in Canadian science? I know it's a complicated question, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's an important question, right? And so, the reason that things are changing is because people have been working hard to make sure that they change, right? So I think one of the most important things that has been happening is that people have pushed granting agencies to make sure that people think about these things when applying for money, right? So even if your work doesn't involve anything related to EDI itself, right? So, I work on bacteria. They are genderless organisms. You still have to think about these aspects in your training plan, right? So how are you gonna make your lab an inclusive environment for science, and how are you going to, not just say these things, but actually work on them and show them and help your students learn them, right? So I think the granting agencies have done a good job of moving in that direction. And our academic institutions have also moved in this direction, right? So I think it's well established now that the best science comes from diverse teams and diverse thinking, different disciplines working together, right? So you need people that are not all homogeneous, right? You need people who are diverse. And, for example, McMaster is really started to think hard about this, right? So we have a couple of efforts going on. We have a recruitment, like a targeted recruitment of Black scholars, right? So 12 Black scholars across all the faculties in our university, which is a fantastic effort. And we also have a new scholarship program for summer students. So we're specifically targeting underrepresented students to bring them in. So sort of a Black summer student program, right? Because it's important to go out and find people and invite them in, right? Rather than just, creating programs and saying, well, if we create something, people will come, right? You actually have to be inclusive and invite people and make academia less intimidating, right? Because I think historically it's been, we've been viewed as this kind of elite, ivory tower, snobby type of institution, right? And that for people on the inside, that's obviously not the case, right? But that's how we're often viewed by the public, right? So I think it's really important to go out and show people that you're just humans interested in cool science, and that you would love for people to come and add their ideas to yours.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was recently reading about one of an elite institutions in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. They noticed that there were very few female. Actually, I think there was only one female student in the entire class. And when they started looking at it, they actively went out, something that you mentioned just now, and recruited female professors. They didn't have to make any concessions. These were all deserving individuals who were recruited. And over years, they actually saw that one student in the class, the proportion changed to about 40 plus female students in mechanical engineering. So these sort of efforts do make a huge impact, and we need to actively make those efforts.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that this is something that's now happening with the Canada Research Chairs program, right? Because that has been very, very controversial in that there are a disproportionate number of chairs that have gone to men, right? And it's not that there are not good female scientists out there. It's just that there are fewer of us, right? But it's a circle, right? There are fewer of us, and so we don't get the chairs, and then because we don't get the chairs, we don't get the recognition, so that we can't set an example. So the Canada Research Chair program has now put its foot down and said, institutions that are disproportionately underrepresented in women in chairs have to fix that problem, right? And there are lots of excellent female scientists out there, right? I think there's some systemic biases that we still have to overcome, right? Women still have to do more of the family life, houseworky type stuff, as much as our partners are now enlightened. And I'm really lucky that I have a very participative partner who has always been there for me. But that's not always the case. And I've talked to lots of women who put in a full day at the lab and teaching, and then have to go home and look after the kids and still, load the dishwasher. So things are changing, but it takes work, and it takes effort and recognition, right? So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to establish this award, right? You have to recognize not just people's scientific excellence, but their willingness and their effort that goes into trying to make sure everyone comes forward with them, not just themselves.
That is so true. And just from my own experience too, I have a young daughter, and regardless of how much I think that I contribute at home, it is way more difficult for my partner to travel for conferences or panels than it is for me, right from when our daughter was born. So that is, it is inherent, and we have to recognize that.
Right. And I think many conferences now are trying to recognize those types of difficulties, right? And they will, for example, provide childcare to women that want to attend conferences and have young kids, right? So I think that's fantastic, right? That none of that was a thing when I had my daughter, right? So my daughter is now 27, so she's actually older than most of my students, which seems bizarre to me. but I had her when I was a postdoctoral fellow, and I was very lucky because I when I was working with Joe Lamb, he also had younger kids, and he was pretty understanding about being flexible with my schedule. So I really appreciated that, because it allowed me to work my own hours and do my own thing and make sure that I was there for my family as well as doing my job.
So that actually brings me to my next question. You mentioned that some conference and some societies they're providing resources so that people, in spite of barriers, are able to attend these meetings. What do you think CSM or societies like CSM can do to promote EDI principles among the community of scientists?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's important to show that your membership is diverse. Offering awards like the Burrows Award will go a long way towards that, right? So showing people that their efforts will be recognized and rewarded is really important. If you want to support people actually coming to the meeting, and people that have young kids may need babysitting, right? So what does that look like? Can you add another $5 onto the conference attendance fee and use that little bit of extra money to support childcare during the meeting? I think it's important to think about when the meeting is, right? So it's historically sort of at the end, in the middle to the end of June, right? Which is still not quite the end of the school year, right? So people still have their kids in school. So maybe that's good or bad, I don't know. If they're on summer vacation, maybe it's easier to look after them. But, also the time of day when the meeting is, we have to think that we don't have to do things exactly the same way, right? I think we learned that during the pandemic, that you could be a lot more flexible with where you are and when you are, right? Could you have some hybrid sessions, right? So doing things like this by Zoom, but also in person, would allow people who can't leave home because they have kids there to still sort of attend the meeting virtually, right? So I think those are all things that we should think about. As much as, I'm sure you're sick of Zoom, as am I, but I've also realized that, it expands your scientific horizons a lot, right? So now you can talk to people anywhere in the world a lot more easily than you could before. You can invite speakers to come to your department who you might not have been able to afford to bring in. So, this is the same for conferences, right? So you can access science anywhere in the world now. And we've been forced to get used to that idea, right? So I think that's actually an upside of the pandemic, right? If I'm going to be glass half full about COVID.
Great. Well, thank you very much once again for all the support to the society, and thank you for being a role model for all Canadian microbiologists. You certainly are one of my role models, and I'm sure a lot of other people think of you the same way. And we hope to see you at the annual conference this year.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And I also want to thank the CSM and the Michael G. DeGroote Institute for originally matching the funding that I put in for this award. So, I wanted to make sure that the award would be given out for many years. And so the additional funding that came from both the Society and the DeGroote Institute were really instrumental in helping make sure that happens.
Thank you.